Welcome to Capital Yoga's reading of The Way to Love, The Last Meditations of Anthony de Mello. I'm Jameen Ackert. This is one of the books that I love the most. I found this book years ago on a table in front of a used bookstore. And when I picked it up and just looked through the pages, I knew instantly that it was going to be a book that I would really enjoy. I've asked Pierre Brault to read the meditations for us. So we will start with the introduction and the first meditation writings called Profit and Loss. Afterwards, there will be a short meditation which you're welcome to stay for. Enjoy the readings.
The Way to Love, The Last Meditations of Anthony de Mello. Introduction. Years ago, when I first heard of Tony De Mello, I didn't believe what I had heard. The story I am about to tell has bearing on the book you are about to read. I was told that Tony gave a retreat to 60 fellow Jesuit priests and spoke to them 6 hours a day for 8 days. I remember saying, no Jesuit listens to another Jesuit 6 hours a day for 8 days. When the fact was insisted on, I remember asking, who made that retreat? The names of some very impressive Jesuits, impressive at least to me, were mentioned. It was then, like doubting Thomas in the scriptures, I said, this I have to see and hear for myself. Thus began the journey with the man who would affect my life so profoundly that years later I wouldn't even recognize the person I was those years past. And not I alone, but thousands of others like me. The occasion of my first meeting Tony De Mello now seems rather prosaic. He was asked to give a weekend retreat to a group of lay people. He agreed to do this on his way back to India from Rome. I asked to be put on that retreat, just to meet and experience the man. It was an unforgettable weekend up in the Saddle River, New Jersey, amid the snows of February. I will never forget the feeling of liberation, the sense he made of spirituality, of prayer, of the meaning of life, his humor, his marvelous storytelling. And it was all done in such a personal style. Years later, when he was speaking by television satellite to more than 3,000 college students, he maintained that personal style. About 12 years ago, he remarked, I discovered something that revolutionized my life. He had met a rickshaw driver in Calcutta named Rinsay, who, although he was dying of a painful disease and was so poor that he had to sell his skeleton before he died, still was a man filled with faith and interior joy. I suddenly realized, Tony continued, I was in the presence of a mystic who had rediscovered life. He was alive. I was dead. He was a man who had reincarnated himself during this life. The reason I say that the story of my meeting Tony has bearing on the book you are about to read is because when I came upon this manuscript, although I was very familiar with all that he had written and spoken, I was amazed at how these small but powerful meditations evoked in me the same feelings I experienced when I first encountered him. Just reading through these pages brought back the wonderful sense of challenge, the spiritual provocation that Tony was such a master at providing. There was a basic honesty in Tony De Mello's character, with which he re-evaluated everything in his own life. And it was this honesty that he communicated so effectively to all who would listen. His analogies, his stories, his telling criticism of sacred cows, all brilliantly peppered throughout this book, inspired in me a like re-evaluation of my own life, and I have never regretted it. Take each one of these meditations and carry it with you throughout your day. Challenge his ideas, mull over his thoughts, and then be silent. You will notice an effortless transformation taking place in your heart, the awakening experience of insight, The wonderful peace you experience when you gaze at the stars or watch a beautiful sunrise or glimpse a soft look of love in the eyes of your beloved. This is the effect these spiritual gems will have. All you need bring to them is a full heart and an inquiring mind. J. Francis Stroud, S.J., the Center for Spiritual Exchange, Fordham University, Bronx, New York. Profit and loss. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his life? Matthew 16:26. Recall the kind of feeling you have when someone praises you, when you are approved, accepted, applauded, and contrast that with the kind of feeling that arises within you when you look at the sunset or the sunrise or nature in general, or when you read a book or watch a movie that you thoroughly enjoy. Get a taste of this feeling and contrast it with the first, namely the one that was generated within you when you were praised. Understand that the first type of feeling comes from self-glorification, self-promotion. It is a worldly feeling. The second comes from self-fulfillment, a soul feeling. Here is another contrast. Recall the kind of feeling you have when you succeed, when you have made it, when you get to the top, when you win a game or a bet or an argument, and contrast it with the kind of feeling you get when you really enjoy the job you are doing. You are absorbed in the action that you are currently engaged in. And once again, notice the qualitative difference between the worldly feeling and the soul feeling. Yet another contrast. Remember what you felt like when you had power, when you were the boss, when people looked up to you, took orders from you, when you were popular. And contrast that worldly feeling with the feeling of intimacy, companionship, the times you thoroughly enjoyed yourself in the company of a friend or with a group in which there was fun and laughter. Now, having done this, attempt to understand the true nature of worldly feelings, namely, the feelings of self-promotion, self-glorification. They are not natural. They were invented by your society and your culture to make you productive, and to make you controllable. These feelings do not produce the nourishment and happiness that is produced when one contemplates nature or enjoys the company of one's friends or one's work. They were meant to produce thrills, excitement, and emptiness. Then observe yourself in the course of a day or a week and think how many actions of yours are performed and how many activities engaged in that are uncontaminated by the desire for these thrills, these excitements that only produce emptiness. The desire for attention, approval, fame, popularity, success, or power. And take a look at the people around you. Is there a single one of them who has not become addicted to the worldly feelings? A single one who is not controlled by them, hungers for them, spends every minute of his or her life consciously or unconsciously seeking them? When you see this, you will understand how people attempt to gain the world and, in the process, lose their soul, for they live empty, soulless lives. And here is a parable of life for you to ponder on. A group of tourists sit in a bus that is passing through gorgeously beautiful country, lakes and mountains and green fields and rivers, but the shades of the bus are pulled down. They do not have the slightest idea of what lies beyond the windows of the bus, and all the time of their journey is spent in squabbling over who will have the seat of honor in the bus, who will be applauded, who will be well considered. And so they remain till the journey's end.
And let's just pause for a few moments here. If you like, you can close your eyes. And maybe, as it said in the introduction, you find these writings challenging. Perhaps you don't agree with Tony. Or perhaps you do agree, or you're just having some thoughts that are provoked by this writing. So if you like, you can just notice your breath. Notice any thoughts you might be having about the reading. Maybe there's something in your own life that you haven't been looking at. Instead, you're focusing on small things that maybe don't matter as much. And take a moment to acknowledge yourself for taking some time out. Good for you. And if you have time to stay and do a short meditation, go ahead. Otherwise, we'll say goodbye and see you again soon.